Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. We are here with the Minister of Education, the Honorable Diallo Rabain, and we are going to get an update on the return to school testing. Minister, good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody. I would like to take this time to provide some updates on COVID-related matters as we prepare for the return on Monday. Return to school testing. As per our return to school policy established in October 2021, when students and staff are out of school for 5 days or longer, we require a negative certified antigen or PCR test as a prerequisite for in-class teaching and learning. Some have questioned this policy. However, the ministry and Department of Education has a responsibility to ensure the safety of our students and teachers, with the ultimate goal of keeping schools open for in-class learning. Therefore, we must continue to uphold the policy of certified antigen testing or PCR tests prior to returning to school. When considering the return after the break for the BPSS, the Department of Education devised 3 options for the return to school testing. Option 1 was identical to what we've always done and would have had all students testing the weekend prior to the return on Monday, February 21. Option 2 presented a staggered start to the return from the break with all pre- and primary schools testing for the weekend of February 21st for a February 21st start. Middle schools will test on Monday, February 21 for a Tuesday, February 22 start, and senior schools testing on Tuesday, February 22nd for a Wednesday, February 23rd start. Option 3 was to continue the antigen screening program and allow for students to submit the results on Sunday night and start school on Monday, February 21st. During the EEMC meeting held on February 4th, after consulting with our union partners, the BUT, BPSU, and BIU, as well as MDL and health representatives, they recommended, and it was unanimously agreed, that option 2, a staggered return, would be the return to school procedure for Monday, February 21st. I want to thank our stakeholders for their contribution to this decision, as I believe everything starts with a conversation. Our collaboration with the EEMC members has resulted in a final decision that all parties have agreed on. EL has already put together a schedule for testing that has been distributed to all parents and guardians. Again, I want to extend my appreciation for all of those who gave forward to ensure we have a plan that will be in the best of our school's ecosystem. The at-home testing antigen program. There have been queries received from parents and guardians about why the use of at-home antigen testing was not utilized this time around for the return to school testing. As I stated, this was a collective decision that was also based on the current data around the antigen program and submissions by our stakeholders. As a result of the then Omicron outbreak and its effect on the MDL testing capabilities, the return to school in January was a difficult one. Additionally, the weekly saliva screening was also currently in place for students had to be replaced with an at-home antigen screening program. While it was always intended for the pilot program to launch in January with 10 schools, the difficulties with the Omicron outbreak forced the program to be expanded to all schools. While this program was quickly assembled, an extensive outreach to parents, guardians, and the staff took place via 6 Zoom informational sessions, tailored for parents and staff for each of our different school levels. The features of the at-home antigen testing program are: it is not mandatory, but all students and staff are encouraged to participate. Students and staff were provided with a supply of free antigen tests, which were generously donated to the Department of Education by ABER, ABIC, and Beltier. The acceptance of antigen tests indicated an agreement to participate in the testing program. Tests must be taken twice per week, once on Sunday evening and once on Wednesday evening. Each test result must be reported electronically using a link provided by the Department of Education. Positive results must immediately be reported to the school and the Department of Health by the parents of a COVID-positive student or the COVID-positive staff member, not by the Department of Education. As we have entered into the midterm break, the antigen screening data received and the process of receiving that data is being examined to determine the best way forward. This process will also allow us to improve the receipt of the data more efficiently. To date, I can announce that participation has not been at the levels as it was with the saliva screening program, with the participation rate of approximately 57% across all staff and students submitting forms biweekly. We need those families who are not reporting to do so to ensure the safety of everyone. Starting with the return of school next week, the following are some of the things being worked on. All pre and primary schools will return to weekly saliva screening. The current antigen online form is being revamped and retooled to be more efficient and allow for critical participation data to be more quickly analyzed. PR campaigns around the need to participate and reminders to submit your results are being developed. I would like to thank all of those that worked very hard to get this program up and running on such short notice. While not perfect, it has done a good job of doing what it's intended to do. And moving forward, I'm confident that we will see more participation. Revised school guidelines. One of the major talking points of late is the guidelines in place within our school systems, and if we will see any movement from where we are currently, that is in phase 1. I've received many emails, WhatsApps, and social media posts asking the same. Firstly, I want to state that we are constantly looking to strike the right balance in the approach to maintaining the safety of our staff and students, with the ultimate goal of keeping schools open for in-class learning. We may not always agree, and we may not always get it right, but the decisions that are made are done with the best interest of our students, educators, and the island as a whole in mind. While the decisions may be difficult, it remains my intention and the intention of this government to provide a safe in-school experience for our students and staff. As a parent and as the minister, I am excited about the discussions currently taking place to examine what life with COVID can look like. We want our children to have an educational experience that is similar to what we expect them to have. Things like sports days, graduations, field trips, assemblies, end of school celebrations, inter-school sports events, school photographs, and birthday parties in the classroom, to name a few, will be returning soon, along with revised mask wearing guidelines. We are also examining the current requirement for close contacts of positive students to quarantine. We're looking at ways to move towards fewer students having to quarantine as a result of being deemed a close contact. We are still discussing these various initiatives and how they may be best implemented. However, I do look forward to being able to give more information on Friday during my ministerial statement to the House of Assembly. As the country moves forward with living with COVID, there will continue to be precautions and guidelines that are necessary to be in place to keep our schools safe and open. Even though COVID-19 remains a relatively mild illness for most children, we cannot pretend it does not exist or does not have an impact on their long-term health. We will always be dependent on our dedicated staff and our families at our schools to maintain the protocols. I thank you for your continued efforts as we begin to see some light at the end of the tunnel. Your sacrifices are not in vain. Your desire to keep our schools safe and open for in-class learning will always be our goal. And with your continued support, we will keep our school doors open. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We're going to open the floor up to Jasmine from the Bermuda Broadcasting Company at this time. Just give her a second to join in. Jasmine, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. You're on.
Hi, good afternoon, Minister. Thanks for those remarks. Regarding the staggered return to learning, can you confirm whether students will be on remote learning on the day that they'll be waiting for their test results?
Jasmine, the staggered return will have middle schools testing on Monday and returning Tuesday, and senior schools testing on Tuesday to return on Wednesday. While the issuance of remote learning is something that will be up to the schools, at this point, I do not believe that there will be actual remote learning for the middle schools, the 1 day that they will be out, and for senior schools, the 2 days that they will be out.
We've had some concerns from parents around the quarantine timeframe. Currently, it's at 10 days if a student is in close contact with a positive case. Are there any plans to shorten that time to keep in line with other public health guidelines?
Jasmine, actually, that's a very timely question. We've just received, Health has just updated those guidelines for quarantining students, and that will be reduced to 7 days to bring in line with what is the rest of Bermuda. But as I mentioned in my statement, we are also looking at ways where less students are required to quarantine as a result of close contacts. And so with the things that we are developing, we are looking at the majority of students remaining in class, even if they've been considered close contacts with the use of antigen testing on a daily basis and things like that. So we're just firming up those particular policies, but they will be announced soon.
Is there a consideration to include the private schools with these new revisions in terms of testing and back to school? I guess people are concerned why certain guidelines apply to public schools and it's kind of left up to the private sector to decide.
Jasmine, let me clarify that for those persons out there that think that that actually are misguided by those types of comments. The regulations that are in place for schools apply to both public and private across the board. There is no different regulations for either school, for either private or public or private.
And that includes twice testing in schools per week?
Jasmine, the antigen testing program that is in place is it's voluntary. There is no rule that says that. There is nothing that says that it is something that is mandatory. As I stated in my statement, it is not mandatory. It is recommended. And so while we do issue the tests out, what we do is look at the percentage of persons that are supplying or putting their results in, and different freedoms that we want to give with schools will be tied to percentages of student population as we move forward. So those are the types of things we're discussing. So when you hear me talk about freeing up schools and having things like sports days, graduations, assemblies, and things like that, they will also be tied to participation in our screening programs. So if a school is not, if the bulk of the school is not participating in the screening programs, unfortunately, some of those things that we want to put in place will have to be curtailed because it's about keeping our schools safe. If the majority of schools are participating in screening programs and the like, that means that the schools are going that we have a good idea that the children coming into the schools are negative, and then we can start having things like perhaps less mask wearing, assemblies, sports days, and things like that. And so again, I just want to clarify that misconception that there's a different policy for both for private and public schools. It is the same policies across the board. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is in our private schools, there is a higher take-up of things like vaccinations, adherence to the screening programs, and the like. In our public schools, unfortunately, and we're working on how we can improve those results, we're just not seeing the people taking up those types of precautions.
And you also mentioned there will be a return back to saliva screening. Do parents need to indicate whether they wish to participate again, or will you be using the previous program?
The return to saliva screening will go ahead exactly. The only reason we discontinued the saliva screening, was because we had, because of what was happening with MDL and the inability to test. Because that what has happened since the outbreak of Omicron and the variants of the testing, where antigen testing and certified antigen testing is being utilized more throughout the system, MDL now has the capacity to go back to saliva screening. So the consent forms that were filled out in September for saliva screening were actually filled out and carries through the entire school year.
Thank you. I think that covers all my questions. Thanks for your time.
Also, Jasmine, I just want to update a note that I just received information that middle schools will be on remote on Monday and senior schools will be on remote on Monday and Tuesday.
Thank you. Just one last question. There was a vote of no confidence in the Commissioner of Education by the BIU. Considering this is the second time in the span of 3 years that there's been a vote of no confidence, are there any intentions to change up the leadership at this stage?
Jasmine, I like you, I have heard that there's been a vote of no confidence. Unfortunately, we have not had any correspondence from the Bermuda Union of Teachers on exactly what it is. The expectations is based on that vote of no confidence. And but we will continue to reach out with them. We will continue to reach out to them and meet with them. In fact, just before this press conference, I had an EEMC meeting with all of our usual stakeholders, and the Bermuda Union of Teachers was on the call. The last meeting we had with them was actually last Wednesday. Well, was Wednesday, yeah. The first week in February, which actually happened to be before they had their emergency meeting. And we were moving ahead. We had discussions. That's when we talked about the various options to return to school. We then had a subsequent EEMC meeting. We utilized the input that they gave as well as the other unions. And so we will continue to keep the lines of communication open. I know in the meeting that I did have with the Bermuda Union of Teachers, I did say that I believe it's time. I believe that we should consider having a third party come in and actually, help us work through some of the issues that we were having at that time. We're still waiting to hear from the Bermuda Union of Teachers about that offer. But I do believe that, all we can do is get together and talk, get around the table and talk and discuss ideas on what is the best way forward for our students. And as long as all of us keep that in mind, because remember, schools only exist to educate students. They don't exist for ministers to be in place. They don't exist for permanent secretaries or commissioners of education to be in place. They don't exist certainly for teachers to be in place. They exist for students. And if students are not there, there's no need for anyone else to be around. And so we have to get back to that center of what is best for students and what we need to move forward. My door is always open. And as I said, I've broached the subject of actually having a third party come and help us to navigate through some of the issues. And hopefully we'll be taken up on that offer and we can move forward.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. We have Gareth from the Royal Gazette waiting. Thank you very much. Gareth, we'll give him a couple of seconds to join. We have Gareth from the Royal Gazette waiting. Thank you very much. Gareth, are you there? Can you hear us?
I'm here, Dana.
Okay, perfect. You are live.
Sorry, just one sec. Yeah, could you, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, you're a little low, Gareth, if you could talk up a bit.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Minister. First question, you started off this press conference, Minister, saying that everything starts with a conversation and that the decision for certified lab testing was made following consultation with the BPSU and the BUT and other stakeholders. But parents haven't been involved in that conversation, have they? It's not a collective decision. They haven't had any say in what the final decision was. Do you think that's correct?
We do. Parents have every opportunity to contact the Department of Education. In fact, there is an open dialogue that parents can link on and express their concerns of the decisions that are made in the best interest of having our schools safe moving back. And so I do encourage parents to reach out they can also reach out through the schools, but they can also reach out through the Bermuda Public School System feedback link that is sent out with all correspondence, because we certainly want to hear back from them and get their concerns. What we haven't had is any. We've had a handful of parents push back on the testing regime, but I do believe in my heart of heart that everyone understands why we're doing what we're doing and why we want to do it to keep our schools safe.
Could you give a ratio of how much feedback you've had and what proportion of parents?
I'm sorry, Gareth, you're very low and I can barely hear you.
Could you give some information on the amount of feedback that you've had and what proportion of parents approves the policy and what proportion of parents don't?
If you're talking about from myself, I can speak anecdotally. I probably have received about 6 emails with concerns about the return to school policy. I cannot speak to the feedback form from the Department of Education that the Department of Education maintains to get feedback from the parents, but personally, I would say probably around 6 parents have emailed me expressing their concerns.
Which is obviously a very small minority.
We have currently, Gareth, around 4,400 students in our system and just under 1,100 staff members. So yeah, I would say that is a small percentage.
Now, why can't you make antigen testing mandatory?
Gareth, to make antigen testing, to make any sort of testing mandatory requires and will require us to make some legislative changes, and those legislative changes would be attached to the Public Health Emergency Act. As you would know, the announcement made by the government last week in the House was that the Public Health Emergency Act, as of May 31st, will only cover mandatory mask wearing.
But you could quite easily say to anyone who doesn't take a test, an antigen test, and file it every week, every Wednesday and every Sunday, okay, you can't come to school. It would be very simple to do, wouldn't it? Why haven't you done that?
No, actually, it wouldn't be simple to do.
No. Why not?
Because the Bermuda Education Act signifies that every child must be given an opportunity to learn. If we come up with ways of preventing children from coming to school, then we have to come up with alternative ways to provide them with an educational experience. And so it's easier for us to have them in school. And this is why we encourage them to do the antigen testing, because if they are doing the saliva or antigen screening, there is a high probability that the school will remain relatively COVID-free and will remain open for in-school learning. If they don't, there's a high probability that it will not. And so what we do, see, we can do this one of 2 ways, Gareth. We could do it the way that you're describing and be the big brother that forces everyone to do something, or we can do this collaboratively, the way that I prefer. We go out and we be partners in keeping our schools open. The department and the Ministry of Education does their parts, the parents, the students, and the staff do their part, and we're all working together moving forward. I prefer that method than the method that you're describing, that I go out and force something on some people.
Sure. How much longer do you think testing is going to be required, and mask wearing? We've appear to have ridden out the latest spike. Numbers are coming down. Omicron doesn't appear to be putting pressure on hospital beds. When can we start relaxing things?
As I announced in my statement, Gareth, I will be giving more details on Friday in my ministerial statement, but we are hoping to relax some things within our schools as early as Monday. When I start saying things, I get excited that school sports, inter-school sports, graduation ceremonies, things that, our children really need to show that we're valuing them coming to school, doing what it is that they're supposed to do. And I'm hoping that we can move forward very quickly with that. Of course, this is a disease. This is a virus that is unpredictable. That in January, we went from we're going to be okay to literally a week later, we are not okay. And so that's how quickly things can turn. So I know there are some people who are impatient and want to see us move very quickly, but we have to be measured and we have to take into account all of the things that could possibly happen. If I had my way, Gareth, we would be completely free by now, but I don't. And I have to take what is being advised from health. I have to take what's being advised from the people who have to work around this particular virus in our schools. And we have to do things in a balanced way, which I think we have made a good go of it. We have kept our schools open despite the outbreaks that we have had. there's only been a couple of times when we've had to completely shut the system down. And so, you know, I think we're doing pretty good at moving forward. And as long as we continue in the way that we have been continuing, we'll get to that place where the restrictions will not be as noticeable as they are now.
Just two more questions, if that's okay, Minister. So we're having this staggered school opening, and tests are going to be carried out over the weekend and on Monday and Tuesday. Are you confident that the molecular diagnostics lab is going to be able to manage all the tests that are coming in?
Yes, I am confident.
We're not going to have a repeat of what happened at the start of the new school term in January.
Oh, and as I said, when we met with our union partners in our EEMC meeting, those are the types of things that were taken into account. I will freely say that the option 2 was not the option that I favored. Option 2 was not the option that the Department of Education favored, but option 2 was you know, we had the discussion, we went the to's and fro's, the pros and cons, and we ended up going with option 2. And MDL also supported it, so that also means that they are confident that they can do what it is that they need to do. And so as long as they are confident, I am confident.
One final question, Minister. This morning, the Premier announced that he was taking over the Finance Ministry portfolio. Do you think he's the best man for the job?
I have every confidence in the Premier to make the decisions that is best for this country.
You don't think he's taking on too much?
No, I do not.
Okay, Minister. Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you,
Minister, we conclude our press conference today. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Have a good afternoon.
Bermuda, and please continue to be safe.